Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining me for an author's afternoon in the locker room. I'm Alan Locher. Today, joining me are authors Tina Andrews, Rodger Howard, and R.A. Rivas. First up, though, is Tina Andrews, the renowned writer who uncovered the true story of Charlotte, Queen of England. Her book, Charlotte Sophia, is the acclaimed historical novel about Queen Charlotte, who is thought to be England's first biracial royal, and who was portrayed in the Netflix smash hit Bridgerton. Long before the popular Netflix series, Tina, a WGA, and NAACP Image Award winning writer, producer, and director, developed an interest in Queen Charlotte. After years of research and writing, she published Charlotte Sophia in 2013, and the book was just released as an audiobook by Recorded Books. We have so much to talk about, so let's get started. Please welcome to the locker room, Tina Andrews. Hi, Tina.
Wow. Hi, how are you, Alan? Thank you for
I'm
having
well.
me.
Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
My apologies for the delay there. But before we dive into Charlotte Sophia and your writing, you studied at NYU and have performed as an actress in over 100 films and television roles, including Conrack, starring Jon Voight, Carney, starring Jodie Foster, and as Kunta Kinte's girlfriend Aurelia in the acclaimed miniseries Roots. But you also originated the seminal role of Valerie Grant on Days of Our Lives in daytime television's first interracial romance. You know, a lot of my fans are daytime fans. So what do you remember about playing that role and being such an integral part of, a first in daytime television?
Well, I have to tell you, if it was not for that role, I might not be the writer that I am today because it became so controversial. And at the time, I wasn't thinking that, oh my goodness, we're kicking down doors and we're going to be controversial and this is all going to be great. I was happy to have a job
Have a
where that
role,
job
right?
was on that I could pay my then mortgage. Um, so we sort of built that role up for maybe 18 months or so. And the thing that I remember the most is the script that came in that said David and Valerie kiss. And that show was on a Friday. And we rehearsed it. And Richard Guthrie was then playing David Banning. And we kissed, having no idea that by Monday morning, 5,000 letters showed up at NBC. Um, some of them were kind, most of them were not. So I was called things that my parents were called in the deep South, back in the day. Um, and that's when I realized, wow, we kind of have something here. It's either irritating people or delighting people, one or the other, if not both. But our show went to number one. So it was always neck and neck. Days of Our Lives, General Hospital. It was Luke and Laura.
Wow.
It was Valerie and David.
Well, if they're not talking about you, then you're doing something wrong. So you were
That's
definitely
right.
doing.
That's right. That's right. That's right.
You talk about letters showing up. What I would love to have seen that kind of first in the social media age. The impact that would have had at that time.
Yeah, but Alan, I got to tell you that if that were happening now, I don't think I would have been able to get up in the morning and go to the job, because as it is, the producers at Days of Our Lives would not let me get my mail before I taped for the day,
Oh,
because I would be so disgusted and so heartbroken and so hurt that I really couldn't function. So they would say, no, 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 come perform first, and then here's your mail, and you can go home and cry. So if we were in social media now, I don't think I'd be able to handle it, quite frankly.
yeah, I totally get that. But I will say, from the moment that kiss happened till you leaving the show, I am sure you had an impact on many people's lives and changed some hearts and minds, I hope.
I would like to think that if you're someone kicking down the doors, yes, you get the broken toes, but you've opened it for somebody to have a little easier route through that door. So I would kind of like to believe that at least I did that. The other thing too is that it opened up certainly daytime television to another kind of storytelling. You got to remember, Nichelle Nichols had the first
Mm-hmm.
interracial kiss on Star Trek in prime time. And she went through it too. And so, you're not thinking so much of yourself as a pioneer when you do
Mm-hmm.
it, but in looking back on it now, I'm glad that it was me who did that, because now, it's opened up the doors for a lot of different storytelling.
That's awesome. Well, speaking of storytelling, where does your love of writing stem from?
I started out. Listen, writing is the kind of thing that one does when one longs to be by themselves, and I
Hmm.
have a tendency to be a hermit. So I was always creating stories and making myself the fairy princess, and all of the things that I wasn't necessarily growing up in Chicago. I could write it all down, and my brother and I would do these little plays and these little skits for mom and dad. So it came from that. I also started out as a dancer, so was always a performer. So I'd have these little skits that I'd write, and then I would perform in them, not realizing that that particular skill set I would end up using as an adult. You're always told, "Oh no, you don't want to be a singer and a dancer. That's not a dignified profession to be. You should be a teacher, a history teacher." And I loved history, and so lo and behold, here I am now, actually teaching history.
Are,
So
are
I
you
get to
teaching history, or you mean through
well,
your
I mean,
writing?
teaching meaning I'm doing it in an entertaining way. I'm
Yeah,
doing it in a
right, right.
dramatic way.
I
So
wasn't sure, but yeah, because you could be doing both.
well, that's true too. But listen, I'm satisfying my father's desire for me to be a historian, or certainly a professor of history, and my desire to be a dramatist, which is why the two have been conflated, and I'm considered the historical dramatist.
Well, was there a book or a writer that had a major impact on you growing up?
I'm not going to say growing up, but later on, in fact, this writer became my mentor, Alex Haley.
I knew that I was going to get
I got a
to.
chance to perform in Roots, and he gave a seminar, and I was there. And I tell you, Alan, there was a movie back in the day called Network, and
Mm-hmm.
the character looks up at Ned Beatty and he says, "I have seen God," and that's how I felt in watching Alex give this lecture. And I said, "Gee whiz, I really want to be able to do that." First of all, to have the book itself and be able to talk about the journey of coming to a particular story, and then be able to do it in the way that he did. So he was a tremendous influence on me. And then for him to become my literary mentor, I cannot tell you what that did for not only me, but my career, because him being a part of my life got me to my first script sale at Columbia Pictures.
What was your first script sale?
It was a project called it was Oliver John Oliver Killen's The
Hmm.
Cotillion. Yeah.
Okay, great.
And in
Well, you
fact, Stephanie Elaine was the executive. So yeah, that's how long ago that was that I was able to get that first project going.
well, you've talked about history and your love of it. You've been writing about historical characters for years: Sally Hemings, Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy, Martin Luther King. Was there a historical character early on that interested you, or where did that love of the history come from?
That's the first time. That's the first time someone has asked me that. It may have started. My first produced film was Why Do Fools Fall in Love,
Mm,
and that was on Frankie Lyman. And so maybe it was because I wanted to sort of infuse musical history and music together and drama together, that I became interested in writing biographies, or certainly projects out of history. I'm fascinated about where we've been, because if we do not understand, grasp where we have been, we certainly will not know where we're going. So I guess that's where it started, and then has just continued from there. I am really, particularly characters out of the African diaspora,
hmm.
that people don't know about. Those stories fascinate me. That's why I was drawn to to Queen Charlotte, because I'm thinking the wife of King George III was actually a woman of color. How do I not know that? So I know that the world didn't know, and I study history. So if I didn't know that, imagine the entire rest of the world. Her ethnicity has been expunged from the historical record.
Wow. And that was going to be my next question, to tell us about Queen Charlotte and what sparked your interest. But you say, the fact that was expunged from her record. How did you learn about Queen Charlotte?
My father, I love telling the story about my dad, and one day I'll probably write a movie about that relationship. My father gave me my love of books. And so when he passed away, he left me with his library. And right now I have 3,000 books between here and New York.
Wow.
In that library, yeah, I'm a bibliophile. In his library were several books by a Black historian named J.A. Rodgers. And one of them, Race and Sex, had this black and white rendering of a queen, clearly someone in royal garb. And it said, Queen Charlotte Sophia, Britain's first Negro queen. And I was shocked.
So I said, your hair stood up.
Yeah. And I had an afro at the time, so it really, yes. And I said, well, now this is amazing. And I immediately went to the library to discover whatever I could about her. And there was so little information. So I would extrapolate a line here and a line there, and I didn't get very far. So flash forward, I had moved on clearly to other historical projects, the largest one being, of course, Sally Hemings. And then people say, well, after Sally Hemings, what do you do for an encore? That was a huge success. And I thought, well, maybe I should now think about the story about the Black Queen of England. There's a little more information available, not a lot. So it meant that I was going to have to travel to London, and I need no excuse to go to the United Kingdom.
Me too.
I love London. And so I went over the first time, British Library, the British Museum, Windsor Archives, Buckingham Archives. I start getting a little more information. I start becoming friends with people, particularly at the British Library, who would email me and say, Tina, I have a photo of her. She had a very small foot. Here's a photo of one of her, her shoes. And eventually I had enough information where at least I had a beginning, a middle, and an end to her story. Mm-hmm. And all I had to do was to flesh it out. And that's what I did. That novel took me 8 years.
You keep answering my questions.
I know, I'm so sorry.
No, that's perfect.
But that's
what I was curious about. But there's got to be a lot of research. Right, but there's got to be a lot of research into, here we are living in 2021 when people, sort of want to expunge our past, Black history past, the Holocaust. My family are Holocaust survivors. People want to expunge that from our history.
That's right.
And if they're, that's so long ago that Queen Charlotte was in power that I'm sure it was not easy to find that information.
You'd find a lot of it, I found anyway, in books that were written about other people, in which she then was somebody who interacted with them. So, for instance, she was in the several biographies that I have on Johann Christian Bach, who is a major character in the piece, in that he was her music master, when she's German. So he was her music master when she was a child. And then they had a something or other, and I'm gonna leave that alone for now, because we gotta let people read the book or see the series. And then King George, once she married King George, has no idea that when he hired a music master for Charlotte, now at Buckingham and Buckingham Palace, George gave to Charlotte. So I love it that this entire house that became the famous palace was given to this Black woman. I love that. When he hires this music master, in through the door comes Christian Bach, not realizing, oh my God, he's brought her boyfriend to her feet. I thought that was just a great, tidbit of information to get a hold of, which then I could exploit in the piece. To know that she was also descended from one of the Grand Masters of the Knights Templar. You know, all of these things I was able to put in some sort of order. And then the question was connecting those dots.
Wow. Well, the film and television rights to the book, which covers everything from Queen Charlotte's efforts to conceal her African heritage to her forbidden love with Johann Christian Bach, like you mentioned, were recently acquired by HBO Max, with you writing the pilot. Have you written it yet?
I'm in that process now. I've done a first draft. The first draft went to them, and we'll come back and I'll get notes. And so I'm contracted probably 4 more steps involved with that. But keep in mind, Alan, I will also be the creator of the show, the executive producer, as well as the primary writer for the series. So I'm very excited
to hold on to that. Do you find the challenge of writing, putting the stories that you've written into a screenplay exhilarating?
Oh my God, that's why I get up in the morning. It's why I get up in the morning. You got to remember, coming from a former acting background, mm-hmm. The first thing that I do, like I did when I was a kid with my brother in the living room in front of my mom and dad, is I'm acting out all of the characters. That's awesome. I have been told that I pitch very well. I sell quite a few of my projects to Hollywood because, you got to pitch the stories. So I have.
Well, who better to pitch a story than an actress?
Well, there you go. And if I was a little taller and maybe was biracial, I would have written it for myself to do. But it's very interesting. I have not been able to write anything for me to act in. So what I do is I create these characters that I would have liked to have done. And so it's exciting for me to see them write themselves. And I'm referring to the characters. I lay my hands on the keys, and there's something very spiritual that happens to me. What they want to say, what they want to do comes from this otherworldly place.
When in the process, so your dad, I think, introduced you said to Charlotte Sophia, and then you started researching and writing the book. Where in that process did you feel there was an opportunity for a screen version? Do you recall?
You know what, somewhere in the back of my mind, having been in Hollywood for so long, there was always the idea that this could be a film. The problem was it's a 60-year story. So I figured, you're going to have to cut into it in order for it to be a motion picture. So perhaps this would be more of a limited series or an out and out series. And I was so lucky in that last September, I got a phone call out of the blue from an HBO executive who said, "You don't know me, but my mother loved your book."
Wow.
It was one of those things. I did not have to pitch. The book was read by her mother, and her mother said, "This needs to be a book that you guys do."
That's amazing. I love that. What did you think of Bridgerton's portrayal of Queen Charlotte?
Oh, first of all, I love Bridgerton.
Me too.
I'm really happy that we as an audience are getting a chance to see people of color as aristocrats, because I will not name the creator of another very famous British show who said, "Oh, there were no Black people who were members of the aristocracy." I'm sorry, I'm a historian. There were tons. Nobody bothered to render them dramatically. So I know who quite a few of those characters are, and you are going to see them. You will see them either in this piece that I'm writing or in down the line projects that I'm writing, because we need to be inclusive. We didn't just pop up during the Atlantic slave trade and end up in America as slaves. I would like to do the stories where we are not carrying the tray and serving the tea and cleaning the house. I want to do the stories where we're Queen of England. where we are aristocrats, where we have a nephew who is dating the daughter of the head of a major family, which we see on Bridgerton. So I really welcomed the opportunity for that to be broken, because then it gives all of us the opportunity to do our stories that may take place 200 years ago, where we are not slaves.
Right. Well, before I let you go, you've been an actress, a writer, director, producer. What brings you the most satisfaction?
You know what, Alan? I can't differentiate between. They all use different parts of the brain. They're all creative, and they all speak to me in different ways. So I can't tell you which one I like doing more. It's a question of the story itself telling me what it is. So a story will come to me. It may come to me as a play, and then I'm off being that. It may come to me as a novel, and then I'm off doing that. I may decide, this particular play, I got to direct it because I see it. I have to have the complete creative control over it. It depends. I love them. You're asking me which one of your children.
Sure, I knew you were going to say that. That's exactly. Yeah. Tina, it is such a pleasure to meet you. I hope we do this again. The fans there's so much love coming your way. Loved you on Days. Loved Why Do Fools Fall in Love and Sally Hemings. My pleasure to talk to you. Stay well. Thank you for joining me. And Tina's historical fiction novel, Charlotte Sophia, Myth, Madness, and the More. The audiobook and its paperback and ebook editions are available wherever books are sold. Thank you so much.
Audiobook too. Thank you,
I did say that. You're so welcome. Thanks.
Yes.
Bye, Tina.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. My next guest is Rodger Howard, a first-time author who spent over 30 years covering television news in the city of Los Angeles as a photojournalist. He believes that while his profession provides a videographer the opportunity to share stories and experiences with the public, it also carries a tremendous responsibility. Photographers have the obligation to tell the whole story, to provide some perspective and critical information along with visuals. Rodger's book Focus, the almost 100% true tale of an intrepid news photographer, is like nothing you've read before. This exciting new novel is based on true life stories of an experienced news videographer named Ron. Ron's career has highs, lows, grinding boredom, and heart-racing excitement, sometimes all on the same day. Beauty, heroism, tragedy, and evil, all part of the job. His debut novel was released this past July and is available where all books are sold. Please welcome to the Locher Room, Rodger Howard. Hi, Rodger.
Hi, Alan. Good to be here.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you.
So you studied broadcasting at Los Angeles City College.
Correct.
Where did your interest in broadcasting stem from?
My interest in broadcasting, well, just like everyone else, I watched the news, and I thought, wow, that sure looks like an interesting career, better than sitting behind a desk all day. Get out there and see what the world is like. And so a rather circuitous path led me to work in the ugly streets of LA for 30 years.
I mean, the things you must have seen on the streets, for those watching, describe, what a photojournalist does.
Well, let's describe it this way. What you see on the news, particularly a local newscast, you're going to see stories that are a minute long, a minute and a half, maybe. Those stories took hours and hours to produce. And by the time you see it, it's been compressed and sanitized and edited down so that you get the basics, but a lot of that story is left out. A lot of the violence and the ugliness, and so what the people who brought that story to you went through and witnessed is a lot more than you may realize. you turn on the news and yeah, there was a plane crash this afternoon. A couple of people were killed, and then they move on to the next story. But that photographer and that reporter were out there for hours and saw some pretty ugly stuff. They may have seen injured people being rescued, or say fatalities, before the bodies were covered up. Things that stick with your mind and affect your outlook on the world. So producing the news and working in the news is a heck of a lot different than watching it.
Yeah, I'm sure. Well, what if you could talk about what are some of the stories that had the most profound, effect on you and possibly have stayed with you to today?
Well, I covered, of course, the big stories in LA over the last 30 years, the earthquakes and the riots and the big trials, O.J. Simpson for one.
Wow.
Each of those in its own way sticks with you. The Simpson trial, of course, the trial itself was troubling enough, but the public reaction to it was really puzzling. Some of the things we saw, people who, I remember seeing signs that said, "We love you, OJ, guilty or not."
Wow.
What are you thinking? What are you thinking? The riots, of course,
Mm-hmm.
there was no way to convey just how large a story this was, just how big an area was impacted by that story. And the same with the earthquake. We saw, a lot of damage and a lot of horrifically injured people and lives that were destroyed. And that kind of thing sticks with you, sure.
Wow. You've also won 5 Emmy Awards for your work. Mm-hmm. Do you remember what the first one you won was for? What story it was for?
The first one I wrote about in the book, of course, all the names and places are changed, to prevent litigation, I like to say. It was what turned out to be the most, the worst fire in the city of LA history in terms of lives lost. It was an apartment building that the management had locked the fire doors open. Okay, fire doors are supposed to remain closed, unless they're pushed open. But they were locked open to provide ventilation. Okay, and when a fire broke out, smoke was able to spread throughout the building, and about a dozen people were killed. We arrived on scene as they were carrying victims out and trying to save their lives on the front property of the apartment building. And so we saw an awful lot of horrific things. As it turned out, we were there, I believe, before any of the other news crews. And so we had access that you wouldn't get today. For whatever reason, over the years, first responders have taken to pushing news crews back instinctively. As soon as one is seen with a camera, no, you can't be here, you have to move back. But back in those days, until you became a problem, until you started to interfere, you pretty much were able to wander around the scene, which is legally the way it's supposed to work.
For freedom of the press.
Exactly. There's something written in the Penal Code 409.5 that allows the media to go anywhere throughout a crime scene or an incident as long as they don't interfere. But much of law enforcement these days isn't taught about that, and so we're pushed back. But anyway, at the time, we were allowed to stay inside the scene of the fire and capture the rescues and the attempted saving of lives. And so we got some pretty gripping video.
Footage. Yeah.
And that was the first Emmy.
Well, congratulations on those
Thank you.
Emmys. After you retired, you were the director of photography on the documentary film The Weight of Honor, produced by your wife, Stephanie Selden Howard.
Correct.
The film was a labor of love and tells the stories of 5 families when they suddenly find themselves caregivers to their severely wounded veterans returning from Iraq and Afghanistan.
Mm-hmm.
What was the experience like as, being a director of photography on something like that and working side by side with your wife?
Well, that's 2 separate questions. It was a labor of love. I came on, like you said, after I retired, and she was already knee deep in this project and had traveled the country and talked with numerous families who were going through this experience. Young couples, young families, where in the case of our families in the film, it was all males who were sent off to the war and returned either missing limbs or severe PTSD or whatever. And so we found the roles changed. No longer a husband and wife relationship, but a caregiver and a patient. And the fact that these couples were so young, they were facing 40, 50 years together in a totally different relationship. And it was something to behold. And we culled it down to 5 families. Initially, we had many more than that, but for the length of the film, we culled it down to 5 and followed those families for a period of 5 years. From the time that the injury first occurred, and then checked with them throughout a 5-year period to see how they progressed. And each family has their own story. Either, they made it work or they didn't. And it was quite interesting to see.
It sounds powerful.
Mm-hmm. And as far as working with my wife,
side by side.
Yeah. Well, compared to some of the people I worked with when I was working, it was a breeze.
Good. So let's get to focus.
Okay.
Where did the idea for the book come from?
Well, for whatever reason, I kept a journal throughout my entire career. For 30 years. I kept a day runner, a diary. And at the end of the day, I would write down, a little note about what story I covered that day. And, along with that, when you say you go to a party and you meet new people and they ask, what do you do for a living? The minute you say, I'm a news photographer, cameraman, oh boy, the questions you get, who's the most interesting person you met? Tell me about the most interesting story you covered. And eventually, you start to realize I have some pretty interesting stories to tell, and people were saying, you should write a book, you should write an autobiography. And I thought, nobody knows my name. Nobody knows who I am. Who's going to buy an autobiography? Mm-hmm. So I had these stories, 30 years worth. Wow. And I thought, well, the only way that I really can envision telling these stories is to create some characters and weave the stories together with these fictional characters. And so that's what I did. And the stories may not be in chronological order, but the characters help weave them into an adventure of Ron and the people that he interacts with over the period of about a year.
That's really smart. Did you find the writing process easy, hard?
Well, it was pretty easy, simply because I didn't have a deadline. I was on my own schedule.
Mm-hmm.
I began writing while I was still working, and would take an hour or so at night and just kind of throw something on paper. But then after I retired, and I thought, well, this is kind of interesting. Maybe I can make this work. And I put a little more pressure on myself to actually get it done and go back and reread it and rewrite it and work it. And it took probably 10 years to get the whole thing put together. Yeah.
Are you happy with the outcome?
I am. When it first came out, I read it, looking for typos and stuff like that. And I thought, I could have said this a little bit.
We all do
differently.
that, and that's probably the biggest mistake we all make, looking at stuff like that.
But I worked with a great editor, and we changed a few things, and yeah, I'm very happy with it.
It sounds fascinating. It sounds like it really could be, like an anthology series too.
Okay.
Like like a TV series with some of these stories,
Okay.
reenacted. I love that. What is retirement like for you now?
Retirement. It's great. I have my grandkids. They're in Tennessee and I'm in California, but I try to get there as much as I can.
How many grandkids?
Sorry?
How many?
3. And I have a wacky husky dog named Loki, and and right now it's a great time because the Dodgers are still playing, and yeah.
That's great. You said, being a photojournalist, you're out there, you spend so much time. Do you still watch news today, having spent so much time in it?
I try to avoid it. If there's a really interesting story that happened that day, I'll tune in to see, particularly if it's in my neighborhood. But no, I don't really watch. It's interesting because my wife was a writer producer, and so when we do sit down and watch the news, we usually come away wondering what the story was, because I'll say, why did he shoot it that way? And she'll say, well, why did they write it that way? And we'll start talking, and before you know, we've missed the story completely. So.
You start critiquing it. If you would turn on the TV, is there, if you do watch any, is there someone, some news outlet today that you feel does it, nobody gets it right all the time, but do you think there's one news outlet that might be getting it right?
I wouldn't do that. They all, okay. I know most of these people who work in local news in LA, and there's a lot of great, talented people who are out there doing the best they can. And, yeah, you're right. Sometimes they get it wrong, but there's a lot of really great people who try to do their best. I wouldn't recommend one station over another, no.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for thank you so much for stopping by. I really appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure. Anytime.
Well, thank you for being here. Rodger's debut novel, Focus, is available where all books are sold. You can pick up a copy today. Rodger, have a great day.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Hang tight, everybody. There's one more author coming our way. He should be here any second. I know he was here a minute ago. I don't know where he went at the moment, so I'm going to check in on him. Give me 1 second. Hopefully he'll be here in a moment. I hope everybody's having a great day. Hope you enjoyed Tina, and I hope you enjoyed Rodger. I want to check out both books. Any questions while I wait for R.A. Rivas to return? Okay. I think RA lost power, so hopefully we will check in on him in a minute. Happy Wednesday, everybody. If there's anybody watching who joined us on Sunday for the 17th annual Daytime Stars and Strikes benefit for autism, thank you, thank you, thank you for watching. Thank you for making donations. I really appreciate it. And we may do a holiday one. I am having conversations about that. So stay tuned and we'll see what happens, okay? I'm trying to see if he's getting his power back. I don't want to disappear if RA is going to join us. I want to talk about his book, The Dark Time Saga. Hopefully he can join us because I know we've been trying to schedule RA for a while. So I hope he will return. No questions? Is anybody watching? I don't know what to do. Well, we're going to see what happens here, folks. Hopefully, RA will join us in just a second. Otherwise, I will have to reschedule with him if he doesn't get his power back. We're trying. We're trying, everybody. What a bummer. He was here earlier. I don't know what happened to his power. This is like dead air on television. No questions? Nobody? Anybody watching? Hello. This is a first. Not really, but we've had technical difficulties before. I'm checking on RA, otherwise I will probably sign off, but don't know what to do. Sorry about this, folks. I don't know if anybody's still watching. Oh, there he is. There he is. There he is. So give me a second, folks. So my last guest today is author R.A. Rivas, who was born and raised in Las Vegas, Nevada, and has been a fan of fantasy novels for almost as long as he has been able to read. His debut novel, The Dark Time Saga, The Black Forest, is fueled by his fascination of the paranormal and the supernatural, including his love of ancient history and religion. It is a tale of good versus evil, light versus dark, and takes place on a fictional new continent far west of medieval England. It's a story that intertwines myths with reality during an apocalyptic time for the world. The book was released this past July and is available where all books are sold. Please welcome to the Locher Room, R.A. Rivas. Hey, R.A.
How are you?
Good. How are you? If you turn your phone, it should fill the screen. There you go.
There you go. Do that. There we go. There we go. Yeah, I was all set up on my laptop. There we go. And then power just shut down.
Is your laptop still open? Because we're getting a feedback.
Is your laptop still open? Because we're getting a feedback. Oh, let me go ahead and shut that. You want to go ahead and shut that? Shut it down. Yeah, just close it. Okay, how's that?
Well, let's see.
Well, let's see.
Well, getting a little feedback.
Okay, let me. You know what? Let me put on earphones. Let me put in headbuds.
Yeah, if
real
you have earbuds, that should work.
Yeah, sorry, don't make everyone sick here. Okay, how's that?
See if that works.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yes, can you just
Having trouble now.
Yeah, let me move to a better part of the house here.
Yeah.
I'll open those blinds. I have spotty cell reception, and unfortunately, I cannot believe that this.
I'm sorry that you were waiting backstage because it would have worked.
Oh, there it goes. Can you hear me now? No?
I can, but you're breaking up a little. As long as you can hear me.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Yeah, I just, I guess the problem is I don't know that everybody watching can hear you clearly.
Mm.
Let me ask folks. I think you're having some trouble with the connection, that it's breaking up the audio. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
Okay.
I'll try and go out. Maybe go out front. Better cell reception. There. So how we doing now?
You sound much better. You sound much better right now.
Okay, yeah. So I can just do it outside here.
Okay, that's great. So let's talk. You've been a fan of fantasy novels for a long time. Do you remember the first novel you read, or the first that had a large impact on you as a kid?
Oh yeah, that was well, of course, you have Tolkien. Lord of the Rings is huge. But R.A. Salvatore was big. The Demon Awakens, that book helped me through a really rough teenage years. So that really got me through some difficult times, and it inspired me later on to start my own little writing, short stories and all.
Did someone introduce you to that, or you found both of those, Lord of the Rings and the other one you mentioned, on your own?
Oh, just library. Yeah, I was
Library.
going through the library asking people what they read, and that's usually what they recommended.
Mm-hmm. Are they? Would you say they're the top of your list of favorite writers?
I'm sorry. What was that? Yeah, it's breaking up. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Are the gentleman, Lord of the Rings, and the other gentleman you mentioned, if you can repeat his name, because I am blanking.
R.A. Salvatore.
R.A. Salvatore.
Yeah, he does the Drizzt Legacy and all.
And are those two of your favorite writers?
I'd have to say, yeah, along them and Sapkowski, who does The Witcher. Sapkowski does a lot of stuff that I really, really like.
And you, besides just fantasy novels, you have a fascination with the paranormal and the supernatural. Can you describe what fascinates you about both of those things?
Because I think that I think there's more science to it than anything. We just haven't figured it out yet. I think that it's a lot more normal than what we think it is. We say it's supernatural, but I think it's actually quite natural. I think that it's part of our world. We just don't know anything about it yet. For instance, I mean, if the quote from Thor is, he says, "Yeah, my hammer's a magic to you until you understand why it does what it does. Then it becomes science." And I think that's the same thing. So, when people see apparitions and ghosts and all these other things, I think that those are things that occur naturally in this world. We just don't know the science behind them yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I'm really interested in. Is I'm interested in finding out, what's there. And Nikola Tesla actually went into a lot of it as well. He said if we spent our time, researching the supernatural, our technology would improve by leaps and bounds.
Have you done research on any of these things?
Book research, and I really haven't gone to any places to do some physical research. But I do, and I would enjoy doing that. We have the Haunted Museum out here, which is a big, tourist attraction for people and all. Yeah, and I think that I would like to enjoy doing some of my own research, going through and seeing. We have a lot of. I mean, it's not like Nevada doesn't have a lack of places. So,
is there something you've learned along the way that you think people listening today would be surprised to know about the paranormal?
I think that it's a lot closer. I think it's all around us more than what we think. I think there's a lot more happening around us than what we think is going on.
Then we're all fully aware of.
Yeah, I mean, everybody sees things out of the corner of their eye or has a weird feeling or something like that. And I think that our ancestors are a lot closer to us than we think they are. So, yeah, I think that, the spiritual world is kind of layered onto ours and we just can't see it. It's just something, compared to the rest of nature, we're blind and deaf. I mean, you take a dog, dog sees in a much, much wider spectrum than we do. They hear phenomenally better than we do.
I mean, they're used for, these crazy things,
Yeah.
Find,
So
smells and it's incredible. It's incredible. History, ancient history and religions is another thing you're fascinated with or interested in. Did that stem from something? Or just your love of this?
No, just I don't know. I've always been interested by things like that. I was interested in ancient Egypt. I was interested in Samaria, Greece, and Rome. Then I went to the medieval ages, which I was really, really interested in. It would surprise me that was kind of like a post-apocalyptic era for humanity. Rome had just crumbled and we were losing everything. Humanity was losing all of its science and all of its culture and technology and kind of rebuilding itself from the mud. And I thought that was really, really interesting. That's why it's kind of become like people, I don't know how many people realize that was kind of like a Mad Max kind of era for humanity. But yeah, I think ancient, even someone described my book as biblical Gothic, because it stems, roots from various versions of the Bible and other, mythologies like Norse mythology and stuff like that. And it builds on that, builds a story around that. So it is something that, has kind of inspired me and drives me through my storytelling.
And you said you have been writing short stories for a long time, right?
Yeah, I've always done fan fiction for, video games. I'm a big gamer. I love tabletop role-playing games, Dungeons and Dragons. I ran games for many, many years on that. And I've always made stories for them. So to run for the friends and family and all. And different narratives, you know, played in that. And so I've always kind of had like this creative itch that finally during COVID spurred me on to write a novel. And I wrote the novel in I wrote the novel in less than 30 days.
What?
It took me years of research, however, to get everything in position for it. One of
So
the
you had
biggest
been
things
researching
as an
this
author
book.
is research.
You had been researching the Dark Time saga for a long time.
Yes, everything that I've been, you know, researching in the paranormal, everything I've been researching in ancient civilizations since high school went into this book. Finally, just accumulated and became one novel. So,
Wow. Wow. Well, for those that don't know, tell us about your debut novel. Tell us, you know, what the story is.
well, it's based on a fictional continent. Yeah, it's based on a fictional continent, far west of England, and it's during the 100 Years' War with England and France. So there's a historical backdrop, but it really doesn't focus on the history. The Black Plague is looming around the corner, and so the king sends a few, you know, nobles to go out and, you know, go to this new land to get resources, bring back for the war. Well, they find out that this abundant land is also home to a very, very dark, malevolent entity that is as old as the planet itself. It kind of rooted itself there for a while, then was brushed out by God, and it wants its territory back. Now what it's doing is kind of like a guerrilla war on humanity to get what it believes it is, you know, theirs.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up to 4 main heroes. It's a Templar, Garrett, his like best friend, who's Brahmaslav, who's a Slavic ranger, like a mix of Norse and Slavic heritage. And then you have young Roan, who's a scribe. He's a educated young man. And then you have Ayla, the fiery redhead alchemist physician, who is kind of like the heart and brains of the troop. The men run off, get into trouble, and she bails them out a lot. And it's up to them to figure out what's going on. And there's a lot of plots and twists and turns because certain people are becoming corrupted and by this entity. That you're slowly learning that many people, peasants, nobles, all the way up, are kind of turning into like a cult for it. And that's starting to change the landscape as well.
Sounds fascinating. Can you tell me some of your favorite on-screen series or movies? Lord of the Rings, is that?
And Lord of the Rings, yes, but actually it goes back a little bit farther than that. Willow. I don't know if you ever remembered the movie Willow.
I think I saw it. I mean, it's a long. I know it's old. I definitely saw Willow. It's isn't it?
I've seen that probably.
What is his
30
name?
times. Warwick Davis was in it. Val Kilmer.
Val Kilmer. That's
and it was.
I knew it. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was the debut of Opie Taylor. Oh, I forget his name.
Oh yeah. Is Ron Howard?
Yes, Ron Howard. It was George Lucas and Ron Howard. And I hear they're trying to make a sequel or a new movie for it, which I'm excited for. But yeah, cool. Willow was probably one of my favorites of all time.
Oh, it's bringing back memories. I know I saw that movie. It's a long time ago.
I own that on special edition VHS and DVD. So yeah.
Do you still do you still have a DVD player?
Yeah, DVD player and VHS. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
I have a dual combo one that survived this long. So
that's incredible. I was going to ask, did you model the story or your writing style after any of your favorites?
A little bit after Sapkowski. I really liked his writing style. He has like a 400 page book that's only 8 chapters, which I thought was fascinating. Yeah. I thought it was fascinating. It's around 8 chapters, and he does it in parts, and that's kind of how I did a lot of my chapters, is in parts. So this way, if someone didn't want to finish an entire chapter, they could read a part of a chapter, and then pick up on the second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth scene later on, and go from there. I tried not to really emulate too many writers, because a lot of them follow a certain flow when they're writing. I was looking more to be kind of like, I don't know, I guess, different and try and keep people guessing and off their feet. So instead of having like an act 1, 2, 3, I have sort of an act 1, 2, 3 to it, but it's a roller coaster ride. So, it starts off a little bit slow going up the ramp, and then the minute that you drop down the front, you're just kind of constantly twisting, turning, and they're dealing with various types of issues all throughout, the territory.
Have you envisioned this as a TV series or a movie?
I have. Usually when I start writing, not saying that I don't know where it will go, but when I'm always writing, I always think of which actors would play the characters. So yes, I did have actors in mind for all of them.
Do you want to share who they are? Hey, you got to put it out into the world so it comes true.
This I don't know. A lot of people are probably going to be upset, but Garrett, in my mind, was played by Mel Gibson.
Yeah. Okay.
The current Mel Gibson.
Some people could have issue with Mel, but
Yeah, they have a little bit of issues with Mel, but when I wanted an old fighter and I wanted an old Templar who had kind of like lost his way and was, trudging down and everything, and he was finding his way back into the good graces and everything, he just immediately snapped into mind. Okay. I saw him on a picture with his gray beard, and I just like, oh my gosh. I was like, Liam was the gentleman from Taken, yes.
Yeah.
The one from Taken. Yeah, him as well. He could play a great Garrett. And then, believe it or not, Vin Diesel was Bromslav. Yeah, cool. If you've seen Vin Diesel in The Witch Hunter, the last Witch Hunter, in the very beginning with his big beard and long hair, he looked like the epitome. I didn't even realize when I was writing it. I didn't even realize that he did that movie.
That's a costly film already. Mel Gibson, Liam Neeson.
That's half the budget.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of those guys. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. I love that you have those thoughts. You should when you're, putting something down. What was it like to hold a copy of the book for the first time?
Amazing. I'm so blessed. I just couldn't believe it. I was almost in tears when I was holding this hardcover, and we're going to softcover. We're going to paperback soon. And when I was holding the hardcover, it was just incredible. I never expect. I knew I was going to get a paperback, and I was like, I'm okay with that. And I got to start somewhere. But Brighton Publishing was phenomenal, and the distribution is immense. I'm still getting emails and phone calls from people saying, "Hey, did you know that they're selling this and Brightoning this?" And I'm like, "No." I said, "I had no idea." And they're like, "Yeah." And they send me the website, and it's for sale there. And I couldn't believe that I got a hardcover book. The hardcover, I didn't know if I was going to get one or not. I just wanted one copy from my mother, and it turns out that it just was selling. She did not read the book until it was printed.
That's a good son. Well, congratulations on all that. Is there another book in your mind?
Yes, I have many, many projects. I have sequels and prequels to the Dark Time Saga, this book right here. I have some books that are set in the Wild West, kind of like, Hell on Wheels meets Stranger Things. I have a pirate book that I'm working on, another one there. yeah, I have quite a few projects to work on right now, and yeah, I'm pretty blessed to be able to come up with all this stuff in my head and get it on paper.
That's
So,
awesome. Well, best of luck to you, RA. Thank you so much for stopping by.
thank you.
Have a great afternoon.
You too. Thank you. God bless.
You're so welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for joining me today, everybody. Thank you to Tina Andrews, Rodger Howard, and R.A. Rivas for joining me. Don't forget to check out Charlotte Sophia, Focus, and the Dark Time Saga, all available right now. You can go to Amazon or check where books are sold. Take a moment to subscribe to my YouTube channel down below and turn on notifications for all upcoming shows. I will see you all tomorrow when actor Michael Lowry joins me live. Have a great afternoon, everybody. Bye-bye.